Destiny of a Savior by Famous Fault. Chapter 23. Endings. War was always the same. It did not matter how or why it was fought. The consequences were always the same. Every side suffered great loss. Many innocent people died, and those who survived would never have a decent night of sleep again. This counted from gang feuds to full-scale world wars. She should know she had survived one. Tracy was, however, too busy staying alive to care too much about the ruckus around her. Every now and then she made sure Dean was still alive. He was fighting side by side with Parvati and seemed to be doing all right, so Tracy focused on her target. The lifeless body of Lavender Brown was laying on the stone floor, her throat ripped open and her eyes unseeing. Tracy had never particularly liked the girl, but her death fueled a violent fury in her nonetheless. The fury was so great that it made her forget all about her wand and awoke her in a wolf. With a snarl, she lunged for the one responsible. Perhaps it was luck, or perhaps it was because that person always seemed to ignite her inner wolf, but the murderer responded likewise. Her way of attacking had in fact been remarkably stupid. Any other Death Eater would have easily killed her with a spell instead of flying at her in the same wolfish manner. Together she and Fenrir Greyback crashed into one of the collapsed walls. Tracy quickly stumbled to her feet and tried to back away, but Greyback lunged at her again, his sharpened teeth aiming for her throat. He crashed against her chest and his fangs sunk into her arm, which she had raised to protect herself. It hurt, but the pain was easily forgotten in the midst of struggle. She, being far more human than Greyback, did not try to bite him at all. Instead, she settled for the classic knee in the groin. It worked. She used the little time she had gotten herself to retrieve her wand, ducking for one or two spells. In the process, when she had it safely back in her hands, she turned back to Greyback, who was looking livid. "I'll kill you," he bit her. "You traitorous little pup!" Tracy did not reply. Instead, she attempted to stun him, but he dodged by jumping towards a higher part and then lunged for her again. This time, she saw him coming and was able to move out of the way. She did, however, trip over the rubble and landed highly uncomfortable on the pile of sand and rocks. It was all Greyback needed. He grabbed her neck and lifted her, putting pressure on her airways, leaving her unable to breathe or even make a sound. Pop! He hissed again and threw her away from himself, making her land in a pile of rubble. She was not entirely sure what happened, but a burning feeling penetrated her stomach. She tried to crawl through her feet, but no avail. She could not feel her legs anymore. As if from far away, she heard a familiar voice call her name. What the hell was this? She decided not to worry about it. She had Greyback on her heels. If she did not do something soon, he'd rip her throat. He did not, however, do such a thing. She noticed his boots walk into her line of vision and frowned. What was he doing? Greyback laughed. "Looks like you're finished." Plop. "Well, what are you talking about?" she asked. She did not feel finished at all. Her stomach still hurt like hell, but the pain was already subsiding slowly. Soon she'd be fit for battle again. She was sure of it. She gripped her wand more tightly. The werewolf laughed harder at her question. "Nothing special. First, I'll take some lovely bites from you, and then I'm going after your annoying boyfriend. You can join each other." "In my stomach!" Greyback's laughter only increased more. His words made her thoroughly pissed off. Nobody was going to take a bite out of her, and especially not out of Dean. The pain had almost subsided completely now. That had gone fast, she noted vaguely, before using an elbow to lift herself to a better position and used her other arm to point her wand at Greyback. "Flipendo!" she said, and sent the werewolf plummeting towards a wall that decided that the impact of Greyback hitting it was too much. It collapsed over the werewolf, surely killing him. Now that she was rid of Greyback, she could focus on other things, like why she could not feel her legs. At least all the pain was gone. That was probably a good thing. Then she felt a warm hand on her cheek. She looked up to see Dean sitting on his knees next to her. Parvati stood behind him, fending off everyone trying to get anywhere close to them. "What happened?" Tracy asked, concerned when she saw the horrified and heartbroken look on Dean's face. All the terrible possibilities went through her head. Perhaps something had happened to Seamus. That would crush Dean. Or perhaps Neville or Luna. Dean just shook his head, unable to speak. She attempted to raise a hand to comfort him, but he pushed it back down. "Don't!" he said, hardly audible, worrying her even more. She wished she could shift from the uncomfortable face-down position she was in, but somehow she couldn't. She could not even use her arms to lift herself anymore. Why was she so heavy? She lay down her head on the sand and continued to look at Dean, trying to figure out what had happened. "Tracy?" Parvati said, momentarily turning away from the battle. "Thank you. Thank you what you did for Lavender." She smiled. "No problem." "Tracy," Dean said, suddenly sounding panicked, almost as if he was in a hurry. She looked at him with a smile. "I love you, okay? I really, really love you." Tracy's smile widened, as she could not help but wonder why she was turning so cold. She could not even feel her fingers anymore. She closed her eyes. "I love you too," she replied, annoyed at how weak her voice sounded. "Don't close your eyes!" Dean called out, panicked. "Please, Tracy, stay awake!" She wanted to oblige. She still had to fight for Hogwarts, protect the people she loved. She had plenty of reasons to stay awake, but she simply couldn't. She could hardly breathe, and wondered why there was blood in her mouth. She knew the sensation. She had felt it before, but it had not been quite as peaceful. She never got the time to figure out exactly what the sensation was, nor where she had experienced it before. She exhaled her last breaths with the words, "Love you." They were only heard by the person they were meant for. Mogoba had been forced to stay in the Great Hall, taking care of the injured. To be honest, he found it quite annoying. The dragon had dragged him all the way here just to be locked up away somewhere. It seemed rather ineffectual. Truth was, not many injured returned to the Great Hall. Most stayed out and fought despite their injuries. He and a woman who called herself Madame Pomfrey were doing everything they could. It happened that someone was brought in with a broken bone or two, and Madame Pomfrey fixed it in a matter of seconds. It was quite impressive and somewhat scary. Since Mogoba couldn't really do anything for the wounded, if he compared his skill with that of the matron, he took another task. Every now and then someone carried someone in. If they were alive, Mogoba let them carry the injured to Madame Pomfrey. But if they weren't, he took them and put them in a long row on the floor. He closed their eyes and did his best to make them look somewhat presentable. At first, the task he had taken upon himself disgusted him, but after a while he became almost indifferent to it. He carried one dead person after another. Many of them were only his age, or even younger. One face after another passed his eyes, not breathing, and with lifeless stares. For some reason, it was always easier when the person already had his or her eyes closed, when Mogoba received them from crying friends or family members. Now and then he got the request to put one person next to a specific other. Mogoba honored those requests, but most of the time he had to ask Madame Pomfrey who was who. Sometimes several people were brought in at once. Mogoba had never seen so much sorrow and death in his life. A dark-skinned boy entered the great hall, carrying a girl with long, dark hair. She had been penetrated through her torso by a wooden piece of rubble that came from the many collapsed walls. She was quite clearly dead. Mogoba did not need to hurry forth and relieve the boy of her, since he did not at all seem eager to return to the battle at once. He himself put her in the row of people, then bent down and kissed her forehead lightly. One did not need to be a genius to figure out what kind of relationship the two had had. There was something defying and furious over the boy's posture as he turned away from the dead girl and left the great hall. There was something over him that said he had nothing left to lose. Mogoba would not want to be the person the boy was so furious at. Now and then he could hear the familiar roar of the white dragon outside, and he hoped that she and Mahad could help them all finish this soon. The row of dead people was increasing at a rapid pace. Mogoba wished he knew who they all were. "I need some help," someone called out from the doorway, and Mogoba hurried to his side. The boy who had called out for help was supporting a blonde girl who seemed to be in rather bad shape. Mogoba quickly helped him support the girl and went towards Madame Pomfrey, who rapidly abandoned the less injured patient she was dealing with. "Finnegan! Lovegood!" She called out alarmed and gestured for the two males to put her down on a makeshift bed she had created. "What happened, Finnegan?" "One of the acromantula attacked her. Professor Marcheshon saved her life," the boy whom Mogoba assumed was Finnegan said. The girl was shaking violently and had several pronounced slashes over her entire body. Mogoba had no idea what an acromantula was, but it did not seem particularly friendly. It sounded like some sort of spider. Finnegan did not stay to see how it went for the blonde girl. He turned around to leave for the battle again, but stopped to look around himself, his eyes wandering over the row of dead people. Sometimes his eyes lingered when he saw someone he recognized. "Dean," he said when he saw the body of the girl who the dark-skinned boy had brought in. He turned around and ran out of the great hall to go find his grieving and furious friend. Madame Pomfrey worked desperately as Mogoba returned to taking care of the dead. He had hardly put down yet another dead body when Madame Pomfrey screamed. Mogoba looked around, ready for anything but what he saw. Next to Lovegood stood Malice, doll of demise. The doll raised his two butcher knives and brought them down on the girl before anyone could react. Mahad appeared in the great hall about a split second later, but he was already too late. With a blast from his staff, he vaporized Malice, Doll of Demise, but Lovegood was already dead. Madame Pomfrey stumbled backwards, and a few of the patients she had yet to attend to screamed in horror. Mokuba did not know how to react. The girl that already had been severely injured had been murdered in cold blood by a duel monster. Mahan! What? Mokuba did not know how to formulate a question that could give him answers on everything he wanted to know. Malice, Doll of Demise, was a shadow creature, one of the few who actually deserved the fate he received, Mahad said, but seemed just as confused as Mokuba. I thought Atab could control them! Mokuba protested. Only to a certain degree. A lot has happened. It is harder now, and it has never been easy. I just don't understand why. Shadow creatures don't usually... I don't get it. What can we do? Mokuba asked, seeing no use in dwelling on things they didn't know. As long as these creatures act on their own, they are weak, Mahad explained. They need Atem's power to last in this world. If they don't have that, they are easily vanquished. The downside is that every time we destroy one of these creatures, Atem will get weaker. How much? Mokuba asked. He had no idea how strong Atem was. He was not at all familiar with this aspect of the Shadow Games he had heard so much about. This weren't even games anymore, they were battles. He did, however, know that Atem was a force to be reckoned with. He did not notice what I just did, but if we keep doing this too often, it will, Mahad said. Then again, we have little choice. I'm going to need your help. But why to do? Mokuba asked, careful not to glance at the dead girl. Madame Pomfrey was quickly recovered and carried her towards the row of dead people, having magically attached her limbs again. Then she returned to the patients waiting for her. You are to go out there and make sure you spot the shadow creatures out the harm, Mahad instructed gravely. But, Mokuba protested, what do I do if I find one? Mokuba, do you duel? Mahad asked. Well, a little, I'm not that good. Does it matter? Mahad interrupted him. As long as you have faith, you will never be able to call upon a creature from the shadows, but that is not the only place where the gods reside. If you have enough faith, you'll be able to summon a monster from the dominion of the beasts. Don't fool yourself to believing it is easy. It requires a lot of faith and a close bond with your monsters. Mokuba swallowed. He did not have a bond with his monsters the way Yugi and his brother had. The faith was not a problem. He was in a school that taught magic, and he was talking to the drug magician. It was the bond he failed to have faith in. How the hell had Seto and Yugi done it? You need Raphael, not me! Mokuba protested, but conjured his deck. It was true that not even Yugi or Seto was as closely connected to their monsters as Raphael was. For the time being, you are the only duelist in the vicinity. That makes you invaluable. We don't know why Malice, Doll of Demise did what he did, but I assure you, it isn't any good. Just try. Then the dark magician put a hand on Mokuba's head. This should protect you for a while. Try not to get killed, Mokuba. Mokuba could hardly say it was encouraging, but he did what he usually did, ran blindly into danger. It had always worked out for him so far. He made his way to the entrance hall, keeping himself hidden. He was supposed to spot shadow creatures, not to fight Death Eaters. Was this why the blue-eyes white dragon, Kasara, had brought him here? To spot shadow creatures? It was not as easily said as done. Death Eaters, students, and other fighters were obscuring his view. Especially the Acromantula were causing him issues, not only because they were blocking his view, but also because they easily tracked him down. Not really knowing what he was looking for did not help either. Then, at the other side of the room, he saw Marionette Might. Mokuba was fairly sure that it was what he was looking for. He conjured his deck and flipped through it as he ran straight across the room. It was nothing short of a miracle that it wasn't hit by some stray spell. The issue that concerned him were, however, not the spells, but the fact that he did not feel a connection to any of his cards. He had had them for years, but he had hardly used them more than 3 or 4 times. Watch out! He yelled seconds before Marionette Might could deal any lethal damage to the man that had organized the fighting troops earlier. The man turned around quickly and blasted the Might several meters away from him. The creature was hardly affected and walked forth again to do yet another attempt on the man's life. Mokuba swore under his breath. It did not matter what Mahad had said. He wouldn't be able to summon any creature from the dominion of the beast. He did not have the bond to them that was required. Knowing it was useless, he dropped his deck, his cards scattering over the floor. He had been more in tune with his brother's cards than with his own. His brother's cards. Mokuba knew what to do. A couple of seconds later, Kaiser Seahorse dealt with Marionette's Might. Mokuba had to say he was baffled. Surely he had expected something to happen. It had, after all, been the Dark Magician who had told him to do it. But still! Thank you. The dark-skinned man yelled at Mogoba, who merely nodded and went back to searching for other shadow creatures. They weren't really all that many. It took him at least 20 minutes to find the next one. Stray Asmodean was attacking a red-haired girl who was battling it fiercely, alarmed when she noticed magic did not really work on it. Just because he knew it would work, he summoned Kaiser Seahorse once again. Stray Asmodean was no effort for the sea serpent. The girl did not seem all that surprised by the sudden appearance of a giant seahorse. Instead, she turned to a monster in question and thanked him. Mogoba frowned. She must have known more than most here did. Then people started screaming. Just outside the entrance hall, a great turmoil started. At first, Mogoba thought that additional acromantula had appeared, but that was not the case. Hurrying toward the large door that led to the grounds, he saw that all the huge spiders had vanished. Why? The answer was granted enough. On the middle of the grounds stood Tragoria. Mogoba had heard a lot about the Fiend, a secret rare monster that when played correctly could reach great strength. He functioned partly like Slifer, although not at all as powerful. He was also pretty sure that like this, the creature did not care at all about what their respective cards said. Tragoria was causing a bloodbath. What was worse, the creature seemed to consciously attack those who fought for Hogwarts. It was a controlled bloodbath. Choo! A girl yelled as the rather horrifying creature wiped out Kaiser Seahorse without any problem, and in the same attack killed 2 other people, a Death Eater and a Hogwarts student. Cho, the white dragon. Mogoba found it still hard to think of her as Kasara had also spotted the dark creature. She abandoned frying giants and turned on the Fiend. Everyone quickly backed away and allowed the dragon to fight Tragoria, but to no avail. Tragoria was stronger. Surely he was now bothered with fighting the dragon instead of killing people, but the havoc the two caused was still major. And the dragon was losing. Mogoba did not know any monsters stronger than the blue-eyes white dragon, with exception of Exodia and the 3 gods, but those were all out of limits to him. He did, however, not sit by doing nothing. He summoned as much of his brother's monsters as he could. The only thing working against him was that he didn't really know what monsters were from the Dominion and which had been ripped out of their rightful place and imprisoned in shadows. After a while, he had a small assembly of monsters. Grappler, Vorspader, Swordstalker, Rude Geyser, Lord of Dragon, Judgeman, Ryu, Kitchen, and Battleaxe. Mogoba had not seen any of those creatures in battle for a very long time. It made him almost feel nostalgic. That feeling did not last long, as it did not take Tragoria very long to do away with about half of them. The white dragon roared in anger for her fallen comrades and attacked the Fiend's head. It defended himself and grabbed the dragon's neck with one of his claws. Now the dragon roared in pain instead of anger. Lord of Dragon and Swordstalker attacked the arm that was hurting their comrade, but Tragoria just shook them off. Where the hell was Mahad? Not only monsters from the Dominion were fighting Tragoria, several brave wizards and witches did their best to do some sort of damage with the magic they knew. The problem was that as long as Atem and Yugi were fit, magic hardly affected shadow creatures. Atem did probably not even notice that Tragoria was using his power to maintain himself. Among the wizards and witches who had taken up battle against the dark creature were the red-haired girl who Mogoba had saved earlier, a round-faced boy who was battling fiercely, the boy who had lost his girlfriend earlier, and the boy named Finnegan. 2 boys who looked exactly the same were also helping. The Death Eaters had fled the scene. Then an additional dragon appeared, and all the beasts from the Dominion backed away. Mogoba recognized him as the Fang of Critias. Mogoba knew that the 3 legendary dragons had vowed to return when the world was in danger again, but it made him feel uncomfortable. It meant that the situation was even worse than he had foreseen. Mahad chose that moment to appear. At last, he stopped dead in his tracks when he saw the Atlantean knight. Mogoba! He called out to arouse the young man's attention. When did Critias appear? Just seconds ago, Mogoba answered. Get everyone out of there! Mahad said, and those who heard him retreated to the great hall. What's going on? Mogoba asked as Mahad urged him to return to the great hall too. I don't know, but when the dominion of the beasts interferes to this degree, something is very wrong. Mahad! Mogoba protested. Why did nobody have answers? Shadow creatures had decided to kill the people fighting for Hogwarts out of the blue. The dominion of the beasts were playing their game. The ghosts of Hogwarts had vanished, and Atem and Yugi were nowhere to be found. How could this all be connected? Mahad did not listen. He did not have answers and was focused on getting people out of harm's way while at the same time keeping a keen eye on the area around himself. It was quite clear Mogoba was not used to battle. He had allowed all his attention to focus on one point and had forgotten all about the other shadow creatures who could kill as well. Neither Mogoba nor Mahad was surprised when a horde of familiar creatures appeared from the dominion of the beast. It was hardest on Mahad though, who had not seen his apprentice for 5 millennium. The dark magician girl made her appearance and was not as happy-go-lucky as she tended to be, but rather gloomy and earnest. The resemblance between Mana and her Ka was both unusual and a tad painful. She was accompanied by several familiar creatures, among them ancient elf, time wizard, queen, king, and Jack's knight, magician of faith, baby dragon, flame swordsman, guardian Iatos, and a wide variety of different monsters. Mokuba could not claim that he was particularly happy to see Toon Alligator, but he wouldn't complain. At last, they succeeded. The combined strength of the army the Dark Magician brought, the Blue Eyes White Dragon, the legendary knight, and the sudden appearance of different shadow creatures defeated Tragodia. It only made Mokuba more confused, though. Were the shadow creatures divided amongst themselves? Some protected, others killed. With Tragodia gone, the vast majority of the creatures from both the Shadows and the Dominion left. The only ones staying behind were Critias and the Dark Magician Girl. Most Hogwartians had already left to fight battles elsewhere. Mahad wasted little time. He immediately asked the two if they had any idea why the Shadows were acting the way they did. "I don't know," the Dark Magician Girl said and shook her head. "We just could not allow them to kill people who have done nothing to harm us." Mokuba sighed. Was there anyone with answers? The unhappy girl, sure, but she did not seem to be willing to share. Snape was careful not to increase his lord's anger further. The sudden interference of the shadow creatures were frightening all, especially the other Death Eaters, who only had limited knowledge about them. Not to mention the massacre in Hogsmeade. Many had lost family and friends. Lord Voldemort had lost his patience with both his enemies and his followers. Snape, who knew as much about the shadow creatures as Tracy had told him, kept his mouth shut. He did not show in any way that he knew as much as he did, but true to his character, he was not half as alarmed as all the others. The only person he was alarmed about was Potter. He had to find him. It was of vital importance. "Why doesn't it work for me, Severus?" the Dark Lord asked, his tone dangerous, displeased. My lord," Snape said blankly, "I do not understand. You have performed extraordinary magic with that wand." He was not at all as void as he had pretended to be. The underlying threat in the Dark Lord's voice was unmistakable for someone who had known Tom Riddle for so long. "No," Voldemort said. "I have performed my usual magic. I am extraordinary, but this wand? No. It has not revealed the wonders it has promised. I feel no difference between this wand and the one I procured from Ollivander all those years ago." Snape did not speak. He did not know what to do. He had to find Potter, no matter what. Before that, he could not die. Right now, his life was the most valuable of all, and it could not end yet. It did not matter what means he used. "I have thought long and hard, Severus. Do you know why I have called you back from the battle?" Voldemort asked, unaware of Snape's panicked way of searching for a different outcome. "No, my lord, but I beg you will let me return. Let me find Potter." Snape's eyes were transfixed on the cage with the snake. The snake had to die, but he couldn't do it. "You sound like Lucius. Neither of you understands Potter as I do. He does not need finding. Potter will come to me. I knew his weakness, you see, his one great flaw. He will hate watching the others struck down around him, knowing that it is for him that it happens. He will want to stop it at any cost. He will come." "But, my lord, he might be killed accidentally by someone other than yourself. These monsters, what they could do. They have already turned against the people who are fighting for Hogwarts. They could kill Potter." "My instructions to the Death Eaters have been perfectly clear. Capture Potter, kill his friends, the more the better, but do not kill him. Then I must remind you that our dearly beloved spirit is controlling these creatures. He has saved Potter's life once. You will not allow him to get hurt." The Dark Lord's voice was mocking and disgusted. Yugimoto and his spirit were the only factors in the entire war he could not control. Snape couldn't tell him that his claims were incorrect, couldn't tell that the spirit's control was limited, and that these creatures were working on their own. It would arise more questions that were likely to give him away. "But it is of you that I wished to speak, Severus, not Harry Potter. You have been very valuable to me. Very valuable." Lord Voldemort still failed to notice Snape's pondering.
My lord knows I seek only to serve him. But let me go and find the boy, my lord. Let me bring him to you. I know I can.
He knew it was pointless.
I have told you no, Voldemort said impatiently. My concern at the moment, Severus, is what will happen when I finally meet the boy. Why did both the wands I have used fail when directed at Harry Potter?
I cannot answer that, my lord,
Snape replied.
Can't you? My wand of you did everything of which I asked it, Severus, except to kill Potter. Twice it failed. Ollivander told me under torture of the twin cores, told me to take another's wand. I did so, but Lucius's wand shattered upon meeting Potter's.
Snape only listened with half an ear. He had spotted something. The only door leading to the small room in the Shrieking Shack was standing up at ajar, and in the darkness looming behind the door there seemed to be a slim figure. It had to be a trick of his eyes, though. He answered his lord.
I have no explanation, my lord.
It had not been a trick of the eye. The slim figure was really there. Although Snape could not tell who it was, he was somehow convinced that he was not mistaking the identity of the person listening in on their conversation.
I sought the third wand, Severus. The Elder Wand, the Wand of Destiny, the Death Stick. I took it from its previous master. I took it from the grave of Albus Dumbledore.
Snape looked at Voldemort, and Snape's face was like a death mask. It was marble white, and so still that when he spoke it was a shock to see that anyone lived behind the blank eyes.
My lord, let me go to the boy.
For some reason, the fact that Yugimoto or his spirit were witnesses to the thing happening to him made it all even easier to accept. When Snape had first heard of that massacre, he had been highly skeptical. It did not really sound like anything they would do. He supposed he had underestimated them, like everyone did one way or another. Kill or get killed. And he was first in line to get killed.
All this long night, when I am on the brink of victory, I have sat here,
Voldemort said, his voice barely louder than a whisper,
wondering why the Elder Wand refuses to be what it ought to be, refuses to perform as legend says it must perform for its rightful owner, and I think I have the answer.
Snape did not speak, could not speak. The only thing he knew was that he was going to fail.
Perhaps you already know it. You are a clever man, after all, Severus. You have been a good and faithful servant, and I regret what must happen.
My lord.
Snape could only hope that perhaps the former history teacher could carry out the task for him. That was, if he wasn't caught again by the Dark Lord.
The Elder Wand cannot serve me properly, Severus, because I am not its true master. The Elder Wand belongs to the wizard who killed its last owner. You killed Albus Dumbledore. While you live, Severus, the Elder Wand cannot truly be mine.
My lord,
Snape protested, raising his wand. He was amazed to see the horror grow forth on the face of the small Japanese. All four of them knew what was about to happen.
It cannot be any other way,
Voldemort said.
I must master the wand, Severus. Master the wand. And I master Potter at last.
And Voldemort swiped the air with the Elder Wand. The snake's cage was rolling through the air, and before Snape could do anything more than yell, it had encased him, head and shoulders, and Voldemort spoke in Parseltongue. A single order. Snape didn't have to understand Parseltongue to know what it meant. Kill. There was a terrible scream, and Snape knew it was his own. He saw what the slim figure behind the door was about to do, no matter how unbelievable it was. He made to save him. Snape shook his head, stopping him. To Lord Voldemort it looked like little else than a gesture of self-preservation, but the Japanese understood. He allowed it to happen. Yugimoto saw Snape's face losing the little color it had left. It whitened as his black eyes widened, as the snake's fangs pierced his neck, as he failed to push the enchanted cage off himself, as his knees gave way and he fell to the floor. And all Yugimoto had done was to stand, watching. Snape was grateful that the young man had tried to save him nonetheless, and also grateful that he had listened to Snape when he had told him not to. There was no point in having Muto dying too,
I regret it,
said Voldemort coldly. He turned away. There was no sadness in him, no remorse. It was time to leave this shack and take charge with a wand that would now do his full bidding. He pointed it at the starry cage holding the snake, which drifted upward off Snape, who fell sideways onto the floor, blood gushing from the wounds in his neck. Voldemort swept from the room without a backward glance, and the great serpent floated after him in its huge protective sphere. Seconds after the Dark Lord had left, the former history teacher entered the room. Snape could tell that the dark spirit had given place to the young man with the large amethyst eyes. The expression on the man's face was that of pity, but also that of confusion. Snape knew that had he had the strength, their expressions would have mirrored each other. Neither man could possibly ever understand the other.
Listen,
Snape said, his voice sounding horrible and hardly louder than a whisper. Professor Muto, despite all his wonder and confusion, did as Snape asked of him. He nodded and took off his blue jacket, which he pressed against the wound on Snape's neck, trying to stop the flow of blood. Snape knew there was no point in that either. He had once been afraid that he'd be forced to kill the man before him. But now here they were, that same man attempting to save his life. To Snape, Muto almost appeared as an angel of death, perhaps, but an angel nonetheless. He smiled. Perhaps he didn't fail after all thanks to this foreigner.
take them.
He gestured at his tears with a weak movement of his hand.
Potter needs to see them. He must.
Snape knew that it would only increase the confusion of the man kind enough to save his life, while he believed that he, Severus Snape, had killed Dumbledore, when Snape had ordered to kill him and his friend.
Potter must die, and the Dark Lord must do it. Otherwise he will never be vanquished.
Like Snape had expected, the confusion only increased. Nonetheless, the man looked around himself to find something to contain them in. Snape used the last of his strength to grab Muto's hand and handed him a crystal vial. With a somber expression, Muto executed the task of gathering Snape's tears.
Help him.
Snape begged.
The snake must die too. Help Potter. Not that I can't.
The potion master could feel the life run out of him at quick pace. He was not quite sure if he was hallucinating or seeing reality when he saw a woman with blue skin and a green dress before him. "Can you heal him?" the soft voice of the Japanese asked. Snape had forgotten how kind that voice sounded. Kind and warm. He was lucky, he supposed. The last thing in life he heard did not have to be the cold, emotionless voice of the one he despised so much. Snape saw the woman shaking her head. Snape did not need her confirmation to know his days were counted. He could hear the sound of a crate moving, but could not tell where it came from or what the cause was. Then an additional figure moved into his limited field of view. Yes, he was truly blessed, he noticed, when he recognized the boy. Or perhaps he was cursed. The two people he found most confusing, hardest to be around. Two people who were so completely different and yet so alike, were here to witness his death. He was pretty sure Granger and Weasley were somewhere around too. They had to be if they hadn't died. Muto moved away, but kept the jacket pressed against Snape's neck, trying desperately to stop the flow of blood, but to no avail. Potter took his place.
Look at me,
Snape said, and was met by Lily's green eyes. His death wasn't all that bad. The last words he had heard were kind, and the last thing he had seen had been the green eyes he had adored so much many years ago. And he had not failed. He could die quite happily knowing that he had served his purpose.